This happened a few months ago. I was feeling lost after my breakup and decided to try online dating. I thought it would help me meet new people and regain my confidence. I logged onto a dating app and started chatting with Jake. He seemed nice and we had a lot in common. I was excited to meet him. I arrived at the cafe and felt the buzz of the city around me. People were talking and laughing, but I couldn't shake this feeling of uncertainty. I've never stopped thinking about how strange that day turned out. I walked inside the cafe. The smell of freshly brewed coffee filled the air. I found a small table by the window. I noticed the sun was shining, but I still felt cold. My heart raced as I waited for Jake. I glanced down at my phone, hoping for a message. Nothing. I fiddled with my cup. I tried taking a sip, but my hands shook. I looked up when I heard the bell above the door ring. A tall man walked in. He looked around and smiled. It was not Jake. He approached my table. "Hey, you're Emma, right?" he asked. His voice was friendly, but something felt off. "Yeah, you're Jake," I replied, but he shook his head. "Nah, I'm Mark, Jake's friend. He got tied up. He sent me to meet you." I felt a wave of confusion wash over me. "Oh, I see. Jake really wanted to meet you. He thought we'd hit it off." I stared at Mark. He seemed nice, but I wasn't sure about this. "Where is Jake?" Mark shrugged. "Something came up. He didn't want you to wait." I wasn't sure how to feel. I felt a knot in my stomach. "So you're here instead?" "Yeah, why not? Let's have some fun." I didn't know what to say. I took another sip of my coffee. My hand trembled as I set the cup down. My mind raced. Was it normal for someone to send a friend like this? He sat down across from me. I could see his eyes searching my face. "So, tell me more about yourself." I hesitated. "What do you mean?" "I want to get to know you." Mark leaned in closer. His breath smelled strange, like something rotten. I forced a smile. I looked around the cafe. People were still laughing, but I felt isolated. I'm a graphic designer." "Oh, cool. I've seen your work online." I felt uneasy. How did he know my work? Really? "Yeah, Jake showed me." He grinned. My heart sank. Why didn't Jake come? I felt trapped. Mark talked and laughed, but I hardly heard him. I kept glancing at the door. I was waiting. Hours passed. I finally rose. "I really need to go." Mark smiled faded. "You're leaving already?" I can't stay." He reached out, grabbing my wrist. "Wait, Jake liked me. You'll like me too, right?" I yanked away, heart pounding. I rushed out of the cafe. I didn't look back. I heard Mark calling after me, but my mind was racing. Was this a trick? I hurried down the street, shivering. Behind me, footsteps echoed. I glanced back, but saw no one. I started questioning everything. Had it been too trusting? Then I heard a whisper. "You can't leave so soon." I froze. It was Mark's voice. But where was he? I felt a chill down my spine. I started to run. Chapter 2. I ran faster, weaving through the crowded streets. My breath came out in puffs, and my heart raced like it was trying to escape. I couldn't shake Mark's voice from my mind. It echoed through the chaos of the city, mixing with the sounds of passing cars and chattering people. I turned down an alley, hoping to lose him. My legs felt like lead, and my mind was foggy with confusion. I glanced behind me, still seeing no sign of him. Had I imagined it? The whispers? The way he grabbed me? I paused to catch my breath, pressing my back against a cold brick wall. I pulled out my phone, my hands shaking as I scrolled through my contacts. Should I call someone? Maybe Jake? What would I say? "Hey, your friend scared me. Can you explain?" No, that didn't feel right. I needed to think. I looked up and noticed a small bookstore nearby. The sign hung crooked, and the door was slightly ajar. It felt like a refuge. I stepped inside, the bell tinkling as I closed the door behind me. The inside was dim, filled with the smell of old paper and wood. I stood still for a moment, listening for anyone else. There were a few patrons browsing, but nobody seemed to notice me. I walked toward the far corner, seeking a place to hide for a minute. I focused on a shelf filled with novels. As I traced my fingers along the spines, I heard it again. That faint whisper. "You can't hide from me." I froze, spine tingling. My heart threatened to leap out of my chest. I turned slowly, scanning the store for any familiar faces. No one looked back at me. I took a step back, glancing at the exit. Then I noticed something on the ground near my feet, a phone. My heart skipped as I reached for it, hoping it might help. My fingers brushed the screen, and I saw a picture of Jake. I looked around cautiously. Could this belong to Mark? I felt a mix of dread and curiosity. What if this was a clue? I picked it up and wondered how to navigate the situation. I clicked on the screen and the phone lit up. A message popped up from someone named Jake. It read, "Where are you? I'm worried." Panic swept over me. Was this the real Jake, or was it a trap? My mind raced, replaying Mark's words. "He sent me to meet you." I realized I needed to leave the bookstore. I couldn't stay exposed, and I felt the walls closing in. I slipped the phone into my pocket, hoping to find an answer later. Just as I turned to leave, the door swung open, and there stood Mark. He scanned the room, his eyes landing on me. I stumbled back, nearly tripping over a stack of books. "Emma," he called, "I've been looking everywhere for you." For a moment, time stopped. My mind screamed for me to run, but I was frozen. Everything he had said came rushing back, and I realized the urgency. I had to get out. Then, everything went dark. Chapter 3. I blinked. The darkness felt heavy.
wrapping around me like a thick fog.
I didn't know how long I stood there, but the sensation of something cold and clammy against my skin jolted me into action. The quiet was deafening. I had to move. I pushed off the wall and stepped forward, trying to shake the disorientation. It took a moment for my eyes to adjust to the dim light. I could make out the silhouette of a figure. It was Mark, standing there in the half-light, his expression unreadable. "What did you do?" I managed to whisper, my voice shaky. "Nothing. Just, come on, we need to go." His tone was urgent, but there was a softness in it that didn't belong to the situation. My heart raced. "Why? You scared me." He stepped closer, a shadow blocking the faint light from the window. "I get that. Just trust me. There's no time to explain here. Someone's looking for you." The intensity in his voice snapped me to attention. "Who?" I challenged. "Not here. Let's go." He reached for my arm, and instinct kicked in. I pulled away. "You can't just grab me like that." His eyes widened and he sighed, looking more like a lost boy than the threat I feared. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to scare you. I thought you were in danger. Can we just talk somewhere safe?" I wanted to run, but a part of me questioned if he was telling the truth. My mind flashed back to the phone. The message from Jake still burned in my pocket. I had to make a decision. Looking around, I noticed the back exit of the store. The door was slightly ajar, and I could feel the cool air seeping through. "Fine, but if you so much as try anything—" "I won't," he interrupted. "I promise." I hesitated for a moment longer, but made my choice. I didn't want to be trapped in a bookstore alone with him. I made my way toward the back, and he followed, silent as a shadow. As I stepped outside, the world felt ominously quiet. The street seemed emptier than before. My heart sank. Where was everyone? "How do you know I'm in danger?" I asked, nervousness creeping back in. "I just know," he replied. "You're involved in something that you don't understand, and I can help, but you have to listen to me." Before I could answer, the sound of hurried footsteps approached from the alley. My stomach dropped. "What did you do?" I blurted out. He turned to me, eyes sharp. "Stay close. Don't look back. Just follow me." I followed him, our footsteps echoing in the silence. As we turned down another alley, the footsteps grew louder behind us. I made a desperate glance back. That's when I saw it, a figure emerging from the shadows. It was someone I recognized, someone I never expected to see here. My pulse raised. "Mark, stop," I shouted, but it was too late. I felt trapped again, caught between two worlds, the familiar and the unknown. Just then, everything changed again. A voice called out from the dark, and I knew I had to make a choice. Chapter 4. "Lily, wait!" The voice rang out, slicing through the tension. My breath caught in my throat. It was Jake, stepping into the faint light, his familiar face both a relief and a new kind of fear. "What are you doing here?" I demanded, feeling torn. "Looking for you." He glanced at Mark, his expression shifting into something protective. "What are you doing with him?" The raw urgency in Jake's eyes made me second-guess everything. Did I trust Mark? Did I trust Jake? "Just explaining a few things," Mark said, crossing his arms. "She needs to be safe." "Safe?" Jake scoffed. "Or running away with a stranger?" "I'm not a stranger. I'm trying to help," Mark shot back, his voice rising. The intensity of the confrontation sent a shiver racing down my spine. "Help? By dragging her out of a bookstore?" Jake fumed. "Yeah, because people are looking for her. How about that for a reason?" Mark snapped back quickly. I stood there, confusion swirling. Each boy offered me a different side of the story, and I just wanted to understand. Suddenly, the footsteps I had heard earlier grew louder and closer, the ground trembling with each step. "Lily, we need to go right now," Jake urged, glancing backward nervously. Just then, a loud crash echoed through the alley, followed by shouts I couldn't understand. My heart raced. Who were they after? "Do you trust me?" Jake asked urgently, his gaze locked onto mine. I don't know." Panic bubbled inside me. "Then decide fast," Mark said, looking between us as the other figures emerged from the shadows. I could see 4 more people, their faces masked, and they looked as dangerous as they sounded. "Run, Lily!" Jake yelled. In that split second, instinct kicked in. I turned and sprinted the opposite way. I glanced back once, catching a glimpse of Jake running after me and Mark trailing behind. I could hear the masked figures close behind, their footsteps pounding against the pavement. I rounded a corner, desperate for an escape. We darted into another alley, and my lungs burned as I struggled to keep moving. "Where do we go?" I gasped, trying to catch my breath, but no one had an answer. Mark grabbed my elbow. "This way." He tugged me into a side street where a flickering light beckoned from a nearby building. I caught a glimpse of Jake's face, worry etched into his features. "What about them? We can't just leave."
We have to, Mark insisted. I swallowed hard. But what if they get you? Just trust us, Mark said, his voice steady despite the chaos. As we rounded another bend, the light turned from flickering to strong. It was a diner, its neon sign buzzing to life. I sprinted toward it, throwing open the door and feeling the warmth wash over me. Inside, the din of voices and clattering dishes enveloped us. I turned to the boys, my heart racing. Now what? I asked, breathless. But before they could respond, the door swung open again, and I felt the weight of another presence. My eyes widened. A familiar face appeared, one I never expected to see in this. Lily?
It was Sarah, my old friend. And suddenly, everything flipped again. I felt a sinking dread. What did she know, and why was she here? Chapter 5. Sarah, I exclaimed, my voice rising higher than I wanted. Confusion tangled with a familiar warmth. She looked different, more grown up, but her eyes still sparkled with the same mischief from our childhood. What are you doing here? I asked, forcing a laugh to hide my anxiety. The din of the diner buzzed around us. The sounds felt muffled, distant. I was just grabbing a bite. I didn't know you were back in town, she replied. But something about her tone felt off. Was she here by coincidence, or had she followed me? Jake stepped forward, his stance tense. Are you okay? Did you see anyone following you? I don't know, I stuttered, my heart racing as I recalled the masked figures. We just ran from who? Sarah interrupted, her brow furrowing, turning her attention toward the door we had just burst through. Is someone chasing you? Mark glanced at her apprehensively. It's complicated. We need to figure out our next move. Sarah studied the two of them, sizing them up. I could see the wheels turning in her mind. Look, I can help, she said finally, but her eyes flicked toward the door again, a hint of fear creeping in. I needed to make a decision fast. What do you know? I pressed, desperation rising. Had she been wrapped up in whatever was going on too? Just this weird feeling since I got back, she shrugged, but I didn't expect to find you in a situation like this. Jake stepped in, urgency in his tone. We need to focus. If they find us here, suddenly, with a loud creak, the diner door swung open wider and a group of those same masked figures stepped inside. My blood ran cold. There were 4 of them, scanning the room like they were hunting. Out the back, now! Mark shouted, grabbing my hand and yanking me toward the kitchen entrance. Sarah and Jake were right behind me, panic electrifying the air. I could hear them shouting and stumbling after us as we barreled through the kitchen, dodging cooks and tables. Quick, out the alley, Mark called, pushing me through a side door. We burst into the cool night air. I whirled around, trying to catch my breath. The alley felt claustrophobic as the possibilities closed in. Where do we go from here? Jake asked, his voice laced with urgency. We can't stay here, Sarah said, looking toward the end of the alley where shadows loomed. Do you have a place we can hide? I've got my car parked a few blocks over. I hesitated, caught in the whirlwind of panic. I was surrounded by faces I thought I could trust, yet everything felt slippery and uncertain. But what about the guys chasing us? I stammered. Trust us for a second, Mark urged. We won't lose them. We just need a solid plan. Then, just as I opened my mouth to object, the sound of footsteps echoed again, closer this time. I turned my head sharply, and my heart sank. They found us! Run! Sarah yelled, and we took off down the street, racing toward her parked car. But as we reached it, everything slammed to a halt. A car blocked the road, its headlights cutting through the darkness like a spotlight on our fate. Someone stepped out, and my stomach twisted with dread as I recognized the figure. Lily? The voice came low and haunting. We have to talk. I knew this person, and that scared me more than anything. Chapter 6. I stepped back instinctively, heart pounding in my chest. It was him, Derek, the guy from my past who had always been too charming for his own good. My breath hitched as I searched his eyes for answers, but I found nothing but shadows. Stay back, Mark snapped, stepping in front of me protectively. Tension surged in the air as we formed a barricade, but Derek's relaxed demeanor made my skin crawl. I'm not here to hurt you, he said smoothly, though it felt like a lie. But we need to talk. It's important. About what? I shot back, anger bubbling beneath my fear. What could you possibly say that would make any of this okay? Sarah subtly moved toward the side, trying to gauge the situation. We don't have time for this, she hissed. Trust me, Lily, Derek pressed, his gaze flicking between me and Mark. I'm on your side, but they're not. A laugh escaped me, sharp and bitter. How would I ever trust you? You've always had your own agenda. Right now that agenda aligns with yours. Those people chasing you are bad news, he said, nodding toward the shadows. I know who they are. You need my help. And why would you help me? I challenged, reining in my panic. The last time I trusted him, it nearly cost me everything.
Because I can't let them get you. They're looking for you, and I can get you to safety, he responded, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. It was hard to believe anything he said, but I sensed the urgency in his tone. The footsteps were getting closer, and my gut told me I had to decide fast. Let's hear him out, Jake said, his voice steady despite the chaos. If he knows who's behind this, it might be worth our time. Reluctantly, I nodded, desperate for any sliver of hope. Fine, talk. Derek shot me a grateful look and began to explain. There's a group operating out of this area. They deal in things that would scare you, things you wouldn't believe. Try us, Mark interrupted. They're after something you've got, a key to something bigger. They think you know where it is, Derek said, his eyes boring into mine. I don't know the details, but they won't stop until they get it. What key? I demanded, feeling lost. I can't explain everything right now, Derek said, glancing nervously toward the distant sounds of movement. But I can get you somewhere safe. We can figure it out together. From behind me, I heard Sarah's whispers to Jake, and their unease was palpable.
Okay, I said, my voice slightly shaky. We'll follow you, but no tricks. Derek gave a reluctant nod, then motioned for us to move quickly. I felt the anxiety bubble again, but there was no time. I had to trust him. As we ducked around a corner, I heard voices raising, a frantic search closing in around us. My heart raced, and just as we reached the end of the block, someone shouted my name, a familiar voice filled with both anger and concern. I turned to look back, just as a flicker of light caught my eye. That's when I saw it, a dark figure standing there, masked once more. Panic surged through me, sharper than before. They knew where we were headed. "Run!" I yelled, adrenaline surging as we raced down the street. I had no idea who would catch us first, but I knew we had to escape. Then everything went dark as the lights suddenly flickered off around us. Chapter 7. All at once, the world turned to darkness. The abrupt silence swallowed us, leaving only the hurried sounds of our breathing. I stopped, instinct taking over. My heart raced, but for a moment, I felt a disorienting calmness, as if the darkness shielded me from what lay beyond it. "Keep moving!" Mark's voice broke through the stillness, sharp and urgent. I stumbled forward, greatly aware of my surroundings. The hum of the streetlights faded, replaced by low voices, distorted and growing closer. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. Derek was still leading the way, but I could barely see him now. "This way," he called, his hand reaching out to guide me. I could hear Sarah and Jake behind me, their footsteps echoing against the pavement. I lost sight of everything familiar, but Derek felt like my only anchor in this void. As I turned the corner, we suddenly emerged into a narrow alley. The stale smell of garbage stung my nose, but Derek didn't stop, pushing us forward. "Where are we going?" I gasped, desperately trying to keep up. "To an old safe house. We need to lay low for a bit," he replied, barely glancing back. Just as I began to ask more questions, I froze. The flickering of distant lights offered a moment of clarity, but then I spotted a shadow at the alley's mouth, a figure lurking, waiting. My breath hitched. "Derek," I hissed, fear flooding my voice. "We need to go now," he urged, quickening his pace. But as we hit the end of the alley, my heart stopped. There were more figures waiting for us, at least 3 of them, dressed in dark clothing, faces obscured by masks. Their posture was menacing, and they were blocking our exit. "No way out," one of them called, laughter spilling over jagged breaths. I felt bile rise in my throat. Panic rippled through me. I looked at Derek, and for the first time, his confidence waned. "Stay close," he murmured, lowering his voice. Before I could even process his words, the nearest figure stepped forward, advancing toward us with deliberate slowness. "You don't want to do this," Derek called, finally revealing a crack in his facade. "Too late for that," the figure replied, raising his arm as if to strike a deal. I wasn't waiting to find out what happened next. I glanced at Mark, who had assumed a fierce protective stance beside me. "Back up," Mark warned, his voice steady. Just then, headlights washed over the alley as a car turned the corner. A brief moment of confusion transformed the scene. The masked figures turned toward the car, momentarily distracted. "Now!" I shouted. We bolted toward the car, urgency driving us forward. I could hear footsteps chasing behind us and heard the others scrambling along. My heart raced once more as I reached the door, fingers fumbling against the handle, just as it swung open. "Get in!" a voice roared from within the vehicle. "Jake!" We didn't hesitate. We hurled ourselves into the back seat as the vehicle screeched away from the curb. I glanced back to see the figures fading in the distance, but my relief was short-lived. "We need to regroup," Derek said, his brow furrowed. "Why were they after us?" I demanded, a rush of questions flooding my mind.
He gave me a look filled with concern, and for a moment I felt his hesitation. "I'll explain everything. But first," he paused, his eyes darted toward the rearview mirror. "We're not safe yet." A knot tightened in my gut. "What do you mean?" I asked, barely above a whisper, just as I caught a glimpse of headlights behind us flickering to life. Suddenly, everything clicked. The chase was just beginning. Chapter 8. The car sped through the night, tires screeching as we rounded corners. My heart raced, not just from the adrenaline, but from dread. I twisted in my seat to look out the back window. The headlights behind us were getting closer. "Derek, what are they doing? Why are they after us?" I shouted, panic escalating in my voice. "I don't know exactly," he replied, gripping the steering wheel tighter, "but we need to lose them." The streetlights flickered past us, a blur of yellow and gray. I felt Sarah beside me, her hand gripping my arm. "What are we gonna do?" she whispered, her voice shaking. "We're gonna find somewhere to hide," Derek said, his voice firm. "Just trust me." I wasn't sure what to trust. My mind was racing with thoughts of the figures in the alley. Who were they, and why did they want us? The car took a hard left, and I almost slid against Mark, who was holding on to the handle above the door. "Are you sure about this?" Mark asked, panting slightly. "Just keep quiet," Derek barked, his focus entirely on the road. I glanced back again. The car behind us was close enough now that I could see silhouettes inside. They were still following, relentless and determined. "Maybe we should split up," Jake suggested from the front seat. "They can't follow all of us if we scatter." Derek shook his head. "No, if we separate, we won't have each other's backs." "Then what's the plan?"
I pressed, feeling my chest tighten. "We can't just keep driving." He was silent for a moment, lost in thought. Then his eyes lit up with an idea. "There's an old warehouse a few blocks from here. If we can get there, we can hide until they pass." I felt a flicker of hope. That could work. With a sudden jolt, Derek made another turn, speeding down a dimly lit street that seemed to vanish into the shadows. The warehouse loomed ahead, its outline barely visible under the pale moonlight. "Get ready," Derek shouted as he slammed on the brakes. The tires screeched, and we all lurched forward. "Now," he urged. In an instant, we piled out of the car, our breaths coming out in shaky bursts. The warehouse doors creaked as Derek pushed them open, and we scurried inside. The interior was dark and musty, filled with crates and cobwebs. As we caught our breath, I struggled to silence the fear clawing at my insides. "Do they know we're here?" I asked, peering out through a grimy window. "I don't think so," Derek replied, scanning the shadows for movement. "But we stay quiet. We wait." We listened, the sound of our breathing filling the eerie silence. Minutes felt like hours. Outside, the rumbling of the pursuing car echoed, then faded slightly. "What if they find us?" Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. "Just keep calm," Derek said, though I could see the tension in his jaw. Suddenly, the ground shook with heavy footsteps, booted and approaching fast. My heart dropped. Someone was out there. Then, in the dim light, I caught a glimpse of movement, dark shapes slipping into the warehouse's entrance. "Someone's here," I gasped. The reality hit us like a punch. We weren't just hiding, we were trapped, and as the shadows moved closer, I knew we were running out of time. Chapter 9. I pressed against the cold wall of the warehouse, my heart pounding in my chest. The figures crept deeper into the shadows, and I could barely breathe. They seemed to be searching, their footsteps echoing ominously. "What do we do?" Mark whispered, eyes wide with fear. I frantically looked around for a way out, but all I saw were towering crates. "We can't just sit here," I replied. "They're going to find us." Derek slowly moved toward the back of the room, gesturing for us to follow him. "There has to be another exit. Keep quiet." As we edged along the wall, I caught movement out of the corner of my eye. The door swung slightly, and another figure entered, holding what looked like a flashlight. I stifled a gasp, adrenaline surging through me. "Stay still," Derek hissed, pressing us against the shadows. My body felt rigid as we watched them. The man with the flashlight turned, scanning the room, his expression determined. "What do they want with us?" Sarah murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "I wish I knew," Derek replied, eyes starting. "But we can't panic now." The flashlight beam swept closer. I held my breath, hoping they wouldn't see any movement. Just when it seemed they might, the man spoke. "They have to be here somewhere. We can't let them get away." A chill ran down my spine. They were looking for us, and they meant business. I felt trapped, like a prey animal cornered by predators. "Over there!" another voice shouted from outside the door. I recognized it, the sound of the guy who had been chasing us. Panic flooded my veins. We didn't have much time. "Back here!" Derek hissed, pulling us toward a small door at the far end of the warehouse. It was barely visible, hidden behind a stack of crates. I pushed it open slowly. It groaned in protest as I slid through, gripping the edge to keep it from creaking too loudly. I stepped into a dark alley. A chill swept through me as I sensed the danger still lurking just inside the warehouse. Derek joined me, motioning for everyone to follow. "What now?" Jake said, panting as he emerged behind us. "We need to move quietly," Derek whispered. "Stick close together." We crept down the narrow passage, shadows surrounding us. It felt like we were in a scene from a horror movie, and I was terrified. Every sound set my nerves on edge. The howling wind, the distant sound of their voices through the walls. Then I froze. A figure was watching us from the end of the alley. My heart dropped again as I recognized her. It was the girl from the alley earlier. "Who are you?" I rasped. "Wait," she stepped forward, raising her hands in a gesture of peace. "I'm not here to hurt you." My brain screamed that we should run, but I felt a strange pull of curiosity. "Then why are you here?" I asked, keeping my voice steady, even though I was shaking inside. She glanced back, her eyes wide. "They're not just looking for you. There's something bigger going on, and you're part of it." Just then, footsteps stepped up from behind us, reminding me we had little time. I needed answers, but we were running out of options. "Who are they?" I demanded, stepping closer. "I'll explain everything, but we need to get out of sight first," she insisted, glancing nervously toward the warehouse. With the voices closing in, I had to decide. Trust her and risk it all, or run and leave answers behind. "Okay," I said, pushing aside my fear, "but you better be telling the truth." The moment hung in the air, tense and charged with uncertainty, and I couldn't shake the feeling that my life was about to unravel in ways I couldn't yet understand. Chapter 10. The girl led us deeper into the darkness, and for a heartbeat I could almost believe she was guiding us to safety. But with every step, uncertainty gnawed in my insides. Her name was Mia, and she was warning us about the masked figures who seemed to be an unending shadow in our lives now. "We can't stay here," she murmured, glancing over her shoulder. "Do you know what they want?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady despite the rising fear. "Yes, but it's complicated. I'll explain if we can get to a safer place."
We moved into a narrow alley, the brick walls closing in on us. My heart raced. Was I following another potential threat? "We don't have time for complications," Derek growled, panic creeping into his tone. Mia shot back a glare, then softened. "I know this is hard to trust, but I'm not your enemy. I took a risk coming here. We can't let them catch us." We hurried down the debris-strewn alley until we stumbled upon a door, worn and covered in peeling paint. "This way," she urged, pushing it open and ushering us inside. The dimly lit room reminded me of a long-forgotten storage place. Layers of dust blanketed the floors and shelves. It smelled like mildew, but it felt like an escape. I squeezed in after the others, and Mia quietly closed the door behind us. "Now, can you tell us what's going on?" Jake asked, his voice filled with urgency. Mia took a breath, her expression serious. "I've been observing the shadows. There's a group that's been watching you, Lily. They believe you have something called the key. It's not a physical key, but a means to uncover a powerful truth." The words hung heavy in the air, and I processed what she was suggesting. "A truth about what?" "About your family. There's history that connects you all, and they believe it leads to something monumental, something beyond imagination." She looked at us earnestly, searching our faces for understanding. "And why should we trust you?" Mark interrupted, crossing his arms. "Because I know this world," she replied firmly. Just then, a loud bang echoed from outside, the sound of a door crashing against the wall, sending icy tendrils of fear coiling in my stomach. "Time's up," Derek hissed. "We have to move again." Everyone began to panic, shuffling and whispering mixed with adrenaline-laden heartbeats. I felt the urge to run collide with the desperate need for answers. "What is this key, and why don't I know about it?" I pressed, desperation bleeding into my voice. "Because your family kept it hidden," Mia said, her tone shifting to urgency. "And now they want to use you to find the truth. The shadows think you can lead them to it." Before I could respond further, the door rattled violently. Heavy footsteps pounded towards us, the sound resonating through the thin walls. "Go." Jake pushed us toward another exit at the back of the room. "We can't risk being caught." We stumbled through the door just as it burst open. I was shoved forward, adrenaline coursing through my veins. We emerged into another narrow alley, each of us gasping for breath from the sudden rush. But darkness enveloped us as the masked figures reappeared, swarming like shadows in pursuit. The alley was a maze of twists and turns. I could see the figures moving with purpose, their chilling intent now palpable. "Split up," Derek shouted, leading us into the haze of night.
In the back of my mind, I knew the risk of scattering. That separation could spell disaster. But as I darted into a distant side street, I couldn't shake the feeling of being pulled in multiple directions. We ducked behind a dumpster, breathing heavily, the world now feeling eerily quiet. "Why do they care about me?" I finally managed to ask Mia, my heart still racing. "Because your family is connected to people who were powerful, and they believe you can unlock secrets they want to control," she replied, her eyes scanning the alley nervously. "Secrets? What kind of secrets?" My voice trembled. "I don't know exactly," she whispered, "but whatever it is, they will stop at nothing to get it. We need to find shelter." I turned to Derek and Jake, but as I did, I realized Mark had drifted around the corner as he turned to look at us. "Don't lose sight of each other," I hissed, panicking as I scanned the shadows. Suddenly, the shadows shifted. My heart lurched as I recognized a familiar yet unsettling figure quietly watching us from the distance. "Lily!" It was Derek, but he wasn't alone. "Who's that?" I asked, feeling a chill run down my spine. "Mia, we need to move now," Derek urged, but my feet felt glued to the ground. "Run," I echoed, understanding what it felt like to be a player in an unfolding drama far beyond my understanding. Desperate whispers filled the air as we turned to escape again, leaving unanswered questions trailing behind like ghosts. What awaited us in the dark? How many players were involved? As I plunged into the shadows, I realized the truth lay beyond reach, wrapped in mystery and danger. And in that moment, a new fear settled in. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about unearthing a truth that could alter everything. And as the dark enveloped me, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Not even close.